Iran's last monarch, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. How the fuck do I pronounce that? Mohammad Reza Pahlavi threw the biggest party I've ever seen to celebrate 2,500 years of the Persian Empire. Pretty sick. And he did it by bankrupting the entire country. Not as sick. This extravaganza was so big, it took over a decade to plan. Iran isn't really known as a fruitful country, so they basically had to fly everything in. And when I say everything, I mean everything. They even had to build an airport in the middle of the country in order to fly everything in. Why the middle of the desert? Because they wanted to celebrate in the ruins of the old capital of Iran. But before they could even set anything up, they had to kill an entire ecosystem. Because there were so many snakes in the area that they had to spray chemicals over the entire city. And even then, there were so many more, they were taking them out in truckloads. And since the party took place in an ancient city, they wanted to get that vibe right. So they built a ridiculously big and luxurious tent city of their own. Each tent has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room, and a kitchen with a private chef and servers. So these tent people had a better setup 80 years ago than I do now. Cool. They imported an entire forest of 15,000 trees and 20,000 plants to the desert, but plants don't do so well in deserts. They even built a fucking golf course around the trees. So they used thousands and thousands of gallons of water to keep them alive, while the rest of the country was literally in a drought. And to make the forests feel alive, they also imported 50,000 songbirds. Unsurprisingly, birds don't do well in the desert either. So every single one was dead by the end of the 3-day party. Fuck carbon emissions, this dude was killing an entire species on his own just to drink. And man, they drank. They imported 2,500 bottles of champagne, 1,000 bottles of Bordeaux, and another 1,000 bottles of Burgundy. They even flew in giant ice blocks to cool all the wine down. And with that much liquor, you gotta have some good drunk food waiting. And they had the best, because why not? They had 18 tons of food, including 50 kilograms of high-grade caviar, worth $1.75 million. Obviously, when people heard about all of this, they basically sprinted to the desert. Emperors, kings, presidents, and sheiks from all over the world came for this festival. 250 Mercedes and 600 limos chauffeured guests. Probably awkward as hell though. None of those leaders knew each other, so when they all first got there, they stood in corners just staring at each other. But once those drinks were poured, the vibes went up, and these guys ate at this infinity table for 5.5 hours straight. It's the longest official banquet in history to this day. The next day, there was a North Korean-sized military parade. They got 1,724 soldiers, dressed in time period accurate costumes, to represent every Iranian army over 2,500 years. To tie up this insane festival, they had a sound and light show at the end of the night. Everyone was vibing, but then everything went pitch black. Out of nowhere, a surprise fireworks show started, but it was so loud and confusing. All the guests thought it was a terrorist attack. How the tables have turned. But after it ended, the rest of the country was so pissed about the wealth inequality, they literally started an uprising, because that party cost an unbelievable $500 million. No wonder he was the last monarch.